There are certain structures baked into the cake of reality that most people will never see. But once you train yourself to appreciate these structures, you can't unsee them. But there's one structure in particular that once you train yourself to see this operating everywhere in the world, it gives you two fantastic opportunities. This is something that's in the category that Miyamoto Musashi talked about in the Book of Five Rings, where once you calibrate your brain to see the way the world really works, not the way you subjectively think that it works, but the way that it really works, you start to see evidence of this everywhere. And one of the main strategies or structures that you'll see everywhere is how everybody projects their own ego out into the world. We are hardwired by evolution to project our ego out into the world, to see the world through our own ego, through our subjective ego, through our belief that we are better than everybody. And whatever comes back is filtered through our confirmation bias. So we only perceive that which validates our ego. This is why you can talk to somebody for an hour and explain things in extreme detail, but they will only pick and choose the stuff that you said that validates their ego, because this is operating in human nature all the time. According to psychologists, we project ourselves into the world, and the whole purpose of our conscious mind is as a continuous storytelling device to validate what we think is true about the world, to reframe everything that we're experiencing in real time to validate our ego. But most people are trapped inside of this ego projection model, this ego projection and ego confirmation bias filtering system. But once you step outside of this and you see this operating in other people, this gives you two very powerful opportunities. The first is that social anxiety will absolutely vanish. Social anxiety is this fear that we're going to express ourselves and then we're going to get rejected or we're going to get some kind of negative feedback. But once you truly understand that everybody in the world, everybody that you see is trapped inside their own ego projection map, then it's impossible for them to reject you, because it's impossible for them to even perceive who you are, let alone perceive you enough to reject you or say anything bad about what you're saying. The second benefit to realizing this is that once you see everybody as always and continuously projecting their own egos out into the world and desperate for validation to come back to them through their confirmation bias filters, you can easily manipulate this or persuade them to do whatever you want. I was listening to this psychologist talk the other day, and she was saying it would be fantastic to do a split test. Two different people. One of them is incredibly shy, massive social anxiety. The other person is extremely confident, extremely charismatic, zero fear whatsoever. And they both give their message to somebody who is trapped inside their own ego map. The person who is trapped inside their own ego map won't be able to tell much of a difference between these two people. And she concluded that the only way you can get rejected is if you say something that unvalidates or disvalidates their own imagination of their own ego. And so long as you listen to what they talk about and pay close attention to their ego language, they will tell you everything you need to know to massively persuade them. And this will let you know that it is impossible for you to get rejected, because once you understand their ego language and you speak congruently with their ego language, they will do whatever you want. And the only way to get rejected is if you speak incongruently with their ego language. But if you speak incongruently with their ego language, they're not rejecting you. They're rejecting a version of themselves that they don't like. Because everybody is always projecting themselves out onto the world. And so whenever we reject anybody out in the world, we're not rejecting them because it's impossible for us to see who they really are. We're rejecting a version of ourselves that we don't like, that is reminded to us by them. So long as you can step outside of this subjective trap that everybody lives inside of and listen carefully to other people's ego language, and you speak congruently with their ego language, they will do anything to keep you on their good side. And so long as you avoid saying anything that is incongruent with their ego language, it is impossible to get rejected. She was saying that people that learn other people's ego language are extremely persuasive, extremely seductive, and they don't even need to try. Now, I don't know what's inside your brain. I don't know if this is just an intellectual curiosity to you, or if you have a deep desire to become incredibly persuasive with other people, to become incredibly seductive with other people. But the secret is to learn ego language, to learn the language of other people's ego, and just turn off your own ego. Step outside of the ego trap that everybody lives inside of and see people for what they are, projectors of their own ego, and listen to their ego language and speak back to them in their ego language. When you do this, you won't even need to try. They will go out of their way to do whatever it is you want, and it will seem like they have the psychic ability to do that. That's why she said this is such a spooky communication model, that you don't really need to think too much about how specifically to persuade them to do what you want. You just need to listen carefully. Listen to their ego language, speak to them in their ego language, and they will develop an almost spooky psychic ability to look inside your mind, figure out what it is that you want, and they will start to do that proactively and very, very obediently.